with this one first. Are we? Hello, everyone. We're live. I'm Gabriela Casineanu, and with me today I have Carey Curry. Did I say correctly your name?
Yes.
Welcome to my LinkedIn with Gabriela live interview. I'm an award-winning author, a system coach, and the founder of Introverts Academy. And I met Carey a few months ago, and we have an interesting discussion about the recruitment process, about the hiring, HR in general. And I wanted to invite her so you can hear directly from her all those great ideas she shared with me. So welcome to my LinkedIn Live.
Mhm.
And I'll ask you to introduce yourself.
Sure.
Let's start with that.
So I'm Carey Curry. I have been recruiting for a little over 10 years now, and I have been a lifelong introvert.
I love that. Me too. Last weekend, someone asked me, do you become an introvert, or what's this thing about introverts and extroverts? I mean, I know we're born introverts and extroverts, and we can just build on that with new skills that we learn. So I like how you're saying lifelong introvert. I'm the same. So I know that you're working with clients both from US and Canada, right?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
tell us a little bit if you notice if there are any differences in terms of labor market hiring process.
Well, I can say most Canadian companies offer far more paid time off than US ones.
Oh, interesting. Good
So
to
yay,
know.
Canada for that. But honestly, I think as far as just things trending in the recruitment, hiring, job seeking process, I really haven't seen very many differences at all in either country. So it seems the landscape right now seems pretty similar for both the US and Canada, and candidate frustrations and what companies could be doing better and all.
Mm. So if you're talking about what's going on right now, what are the challenges that you noticed that came out of the pandemic in the recruitment landscape?
Well, what I would say is it's a positive for candidates. It's more of a challenge for companies is I have been finding that more and more candidates do seem to have a better idea of what they're willing to put up with and what they really want out of a company and a job, more so than I've seen in past years. I think candidates are really starting to become their own advocates, which I think is great. And they're not willing to settle, which you shouldn't. This is going to take up, 90% of your Monday through Friday, or, your typical 40 hours a week. So you might as well be at a place that aligns with your values, a place that you feel welcome and that you enjoy working for. Some of the another great challenge too is I think more people are seeing the balance that remote work gives them. And a lot of candidates really enjoy that. And for a lot of them, that's non-negotiable. Now, on the flip side, how this is a challenge to companies is I still feel like a lot of companies are still stuck in the past. They can't let go well, this is how it's always been done, or forcing people to come back in an office in fields or even positions that don't really require you to work on site. Obviously, there are some professions where that's just not possible. Certainly you want your surgeon at the hospital performing surgery on you.
Ideally, yes.
But for a lot of companies, I really feel like there is still a lot of trepidation on letting go and not being so micromanagey and really embracing trusting your employees to do what they've been hired to do without having to physically see them all the time. And, you know, some other challenges that I think that kind of stem from just that reluctance to really jump forward with all of these different values that candidates are now finding very important in their job search. You know, they're still going with a long application process. You upload a resume and now you've got to type everything into their system. That's all stuff that really frustrates candidates, and they're probably going to quit the process early on, as they should. You know, having somebody go through 4, 5, 6, 7+ interviews, it's overkill. You know, if you want several people of your company to meet a candidate, just do a panel interview so they have the chance to meet everybody. They're not trying to schedule several interviews around their work schedule. You know, really just being more respectful of a candidate's time. The return to office that I touched base on, for whatever that need to physically see your people every day. And, you know, even something as simple as like requiring a cover letter, like all that does is really just show them how good of a writer you are. And in most cases, you don't need to be an amazing writer
for the position you're applying for.
And that's what an interview is for. The interview is to discover more about the person. So yeah, those are just, and I just recently read an article in HR Magazine that was also stating maybe companies should focus more on hiring for skill rather than a degree, because experience in a field should be just as valuable as going through college and getting that certification or that degree.
And I'll come back to what you just said, but it keeps staying in my mind, this an idea that you shared me when we talked before. You said that the market changed from the employer market into candidate market. Can you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think really the biggest thing is that candidates are really starting to become more informed. You know, it kind of reminds me of that 80s song, like, "We're not gonna take it." And I feel like that's a lot of attitudes candidates have, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, because and touching on introversion, that can be one of the things that really is a struggle for us, is being that self-advocate and saying, no, that's not okay with me. Thanks, but this might not be the right opportunity for me. And, you know, so I think in that regard, I just really think candidates are fed up with the old archaic ways of doing things.
Mm-hmm. And you're talking about the recruitment process is too long, and it still doesn't adjust to the speed of the what's going on around us. Is there anything that candidate can do about that, in the way they approach companies, in the way they present themselves? Do you have any suggestions?
Honestly, I feel like the best thing you can do is don't put all your eggs in one basket. You know, even if you're on the second interview stage, the first interview stage, even if you're in the offer stage, keep interviewing, because, you know, not a lot of people can afford to wait, you know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 weeks to get just the offer, and then have to wait even more time to start. So my best advice to candidates is keep interviewing, keep applying, don't stop, because there are so many people applying for jobs that even if you are a top qualified candidate, there are other qualified candidates too. So there's no guarantee you're going to get that job. So yeah, diversify for sure.
And how does it look from the employer perspective? Because when I shared your advice with other clients that I have, they said, "But what can I say? I'm going to an interview right now. Should I tell them that I'm interviewing for other positions or not? Or how should they approach this?"
You don't have to. It's really none of their business, because I think it's safe to assume, for companies to assume, that you are interviewing with other companies, just like it's safe for a candidate to assume that you're not the only person that this company is going to be interviewing with. And so it is sort of like that balance of, a lot of people are hesitant, but I don't think you really need to share. I think it's a universal assumption on both sides. You're not the only one.
Yeah, there are people who are fearing to think about that.
Yeah.
So in terms of company values, do you consider that companies are hiring for values, for organizational culture, or for resume background, a combination of both? Did anything change in the last time since the pandemic?
Honestly, I don't think a lot of people in general understand what company culture is. I think for a lot of people, whether it's a company or a candidate, they kind of view it as like the perks a company might give you or the benefits that they offer. But it really should be the environment that they provide, the values that they hold, and what their core, I think the mission is even involved in all of that. So I think that's the first misconception on both sides, is that your company culture isn't necessarily all the nice little things you do for employees. And I think the pandemic brought about, nobody's been through this before. And so I think for a lot of companies, there was panic. And that's when you saw like all we have like team lunches every Thursday, or we have pizza Friday. We'll buy you donuts and coffee. And I think candidates are at a point where it's like, they don't care. Like,
especially introverts,
want a salary that matches their qualifications and their education. They want true work-life balance, where if your shift is 9 to 5, that 90% of the time, unless there's a big project or something going on, you don't have to worry about checking your email after 5 o'clock or getting that 6 o'clock phone call of, can you just send this out really quick for me? I think respecting boundaries is the primary thing that candidates are really looking for, is a fair salary and respecting their home life, and having work not interfere during those precious hours that they do get with their family, or for like an introvert, by themselves to recharge.
Yeah, that's totally true. So let me figure out what else I need to do to be productive during the working hours. And I love what you're saying. I published a book, Introverts, Leverage Your Strengths for an Effective Job Search. And I've got a review from a former hiring manager. And her perspective is that hiring managers tend to hire more extroverts because they are open and they talk about themselves. And introverts don't talk too much, so it's hard to assess them according to the position. And she said that my book addresses that challenge for introverts. So what's your perspective about introverts, extroverts regarding the hiring process? From a company perspective, and if you have also from the candidate perspective.
Well, I agree with that statement to the point in that it is easier to, I think, gravitate towards extroverts just because they're generally the people that are the life of the party. They have no trouble talking to anybody, whether it be about themselves or other people, making introductions. So I feel like for the most part, they are probably a little bit more forthcoming in information. Like I myself as an introvert, I've learned to be more forthcoming because it was just necessity. You know, you put on your best Oscar winning performance and then you take a nap after the interview. But I can understand that perspective because extroverts just put it all out there and you accept them or you don't, and that's fine. You know, I disagree to an extent because I feel like if you truly are active listening, you can get to know an introvert pretty well. And ask more questions, be more relational in an interview. Like, don't just start wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, firing off question after question after question. One of the tactics I personally use is I just build a rapport no matter who they are, extrovert or introvert, you know, and try not to make it like a scary thing. Like, let's just have a conversation. You know, what's important to you? What interested you? What are you looking for in this next step in your career? Just things that really get to know somebody on a deeper level rather than, well, how many years of experience? How many people did you place last year? You know, to that effect, which I think is a default for a lot of people. Like, I just want to get to the point and get this done and over with.
Yeah, on the other side, I have an example in the book when a school wanted to hire a teacher, and there were an introvert and an extrovert who applied for the position, and they hired the extrovert based on what we just said. And they realized that he was not performing well. So it's not enough for every position to just talk well and present yourself well. There are so many other skills that you need to perform for one position or another. So it's not that one type fits all. For example, introverts are strategic thinkers, and do the recruiters, companies test that kind of skill. They are also great observers. They have a lot of strengths. On Introverts Academy, we have a list to download the 30 introvert strengths. So when you start looking into those strengths, if you want those strengths into the company, you start changing your recruitment process. But also you as a candidate, you can look at what do you like about this position, about the company, about how this position can help you build the careers that you want. And since introverts are motivated from inside, you can find something that motivates you, that's meaningful to you, and go to that interview with that kind of energy, and you project it there, and they may even think that you're an extrovert because you're talking about something that you like. Like, but it's coming from inside. It's not because you're an extrovert. I get this often when I do a webinar or a workshop. Oh, you're an extrovert. No, I'm an introvert. Don't ask me how much time I need after to recharge. But I'm talking about things that I'm passionate about, things that I love. And you notice that energy, you connect with that energy when I'm talking. So that's what introverts can do. And I talk more about that in my book. So let's go to another question. So do you have something more to add? Because you said you're the introverted recruiter. Any more perspective on hiring?
I mean, I think for me, really the interview hiring process should be streamless, well-planned, and efficient. I think that benefits candidates, and I think it benefits employers. You know, a lot of it shouldn't be like this hard, arduous thing where you're just completely exhausted with the process. So to me, that is what the hiring process should be. The candidate should walk away having a really good understanding of your company, what a day in the life of the role that they're applying for looks like, what the company stands for, what it's like to work with them, and ensuring that they've had plenty of opportunities to ask the questions that would be important to them as well. Because honestly, I think the best analogy I can use is job hunting is the same as dating. You're trying to find that right connection. And as my mom always told me, like, sometimes you got to kiss a few toads before you find your prince. And I think it's the same with companies, you know. So and even if it doesn't align, it doesn't mean that the company's a bad company, or that they led you on. It just means that it's not the right fit. You know, it's just not a good match, and that's okay too.
Yeah, I have several examples of clients that I have. They focused on what they're passionate about, and they look for companies who have something related to that, even if they were in a totally different field. But they had a connection with the company objective or policies. I'm thinking about a specific example. She's passionate about sustainability, for example, and she's in IT. And she looked for companies who have something to do with sustainability, or at least they have internal policies and they care about the environment. And she told me after she got the position that was important in the interview. They asked her about that. Why did you apply? And when they noticed that connection, they hire her instead of someone else who has the same skills. So this is what candidates can do, and even more important for introverts, find something that you have in common with a company, with the projects they deliver, with how they are doing things. I recently noticed an image. It was about job interview, and it was the recruiter on one side and the candidate on the other side. And the recruiter was saying, I guess it was HR manager, our company is great. We have a lot of interesting fun activities. We have so many things that you will enjoy. And the introvert says, that was a bad part. Do you have any good parts?
Yep.
Because the introvert is not into activities and being active all the time. So
yes.
You have to understand that introverts and extroverts have complementary strengths, have complementary preferences, and the environment has to allow both of them to feel at ease and contribute. It's not just we have these positions, these are the skills, but how do you encourage people to contribute? It's how you build that environment. And it even starts with the recruitment process. It can tell you something about what the company does, about their culture.
Yeah, absolutely. My husband's former military, and he calls that mandatory fun, because that's what they would do in the military is you'd get time off, but it's like, oh, but we have these things that we've planned for you guys and you have to participate, but it's going to be fun. And bonding experiences like that, it's great for a company to host those, but please do not make it, you know, mandatory for people to go, or, you know, get offended because somebody's like, no, I really just want to go home and be with my family or curl up on the couch and finish the book that I was really getting into. And I think a great way to avoid that is maybe even doing employee surveys. Like, instead of guessing what they want, find out from the source what's important to them. I think they'd be surprised to learn that they would gladly give up Pizza Friday if, you know, it meant a better pay, or that at 5 o'clock you shut your computer down and you end your day. And we'll see you tomorrow.
And even if you go to an activity like this, don't force them to participate. Let them do whatever they want. Introverts like to, even if they are there, they might be okay just observing, just having one-on-one conversations with colleagues. They don't have to be loud and participate in all kinds of activities you think that are fun for them. And for introverts, you can see me drinking water. It's good to release a stress in a job interview, for example. For me, I had the problem with my voice a few years ago, and I still need to drink water while I'm talking. So that's why you see me drinking. But even sharing something like this, so don't let the others assume something. For example, I encourage introverts to share that they are introverts, to own it. And they can even share more about their strengths, about like what they can bring to the company. Because if you don't say it, you allow other people to assume something. And they might assume that you're an extrovert, for example. And they ask you to behave like an extrovert if they assume that.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things that we can do. We have someone who asked us if there are any new trends and how to improve one's chances to be selected for a job. Do you have anything to add to this?
So it is a highly competitive market. And even though it is a candidate market, still people, as this person seems to have struggled to even just get to the interview stage of things. And I would say, one of the easiest free things you could do is make sure your LinkedIn profile is complete. Especially for recruiters, oftentimes we use searches of keywords to find maybe passive candidates on LinkedIn that haven't actively applied, but they have the experience or the education that we'd be looking for this particular role we're trying to fill. So I would highly encourage candidates, don't make your existing company your identity. And what I mean by that is in a lot of people's headlines, they put like their company's information or like what their company does. And it's like, but your LinkedIn profile is for you. The company has their own LinkedIn profile page to say all that stuff. And if you want to get noticed a little bit more, I think that's a simple way. Like my tagline is the Introverted Recruiter. And funny enough, I've had a lot of people contact me to just say like, I love your tagline. Like, it's a little bizarre because the two don't fit together, but it's true. And you don't have to go that creative, but list the things that you're really confident about, like CAD designer or payroll specialist, job titles that maybe you would be looking to get into, not necessarily what you're in now. So look at LinkedIn and make sure it's all about you, not your company or anybody else, because this is your advertisement to the world.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm building right now a course for Introverts Academy, LinkedIn 101, about the features of LinkedIn. And then I'm building LinkedIn 201 with strategies, because LinkedIn has features, but how you use those features shows how you present yourself, you build credibility and trust. So it's much more about the strategies, but if you don't use the features right, you lose a lot, like what you're saying. Even the tagline that you have under your name can say something about you. Mm-hmm. If you're passionate about, let's say, sustainability and you're an IT programmer, you can say IT programmer passionate about environmental issues. So this gives people an idea that you are an IT professional. They can hire you as an IT professional, but if the company is interested or has something, a project related to that, they might be interested more in you than in someone else.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And there is another example that I noticed at one point on LinkedIn. Someone said she's an administrative assistant, and she said she's giving the executive directors peace of mind. Mm. So she's talking about the benefits.
Yeah.
That people are hiring them. You're not a function. You bring some benefits if they hire you. So I encourage people to look at other people's profiles and see what they like in other people's profiles, especially in their field, their peers, and just rework on their profile. Put a nice header, because that's your real estate. Put a summary, put some achievements. I noticed a lot of people don't put achievements. If you have them, put them there. Put more in the description. You have a summary, you have a highlights section, you have experience. You also can ask people to recommend you. What do you say about recommendations? I let you talk about that instead of just me. Do you like to see recommendations on LinkedIn profiles?
I mean, for me personally, it's great to have those because it's so nice to see people who advocate for this person's work, and sometimes they add a little bit more specific detail on, oh, I just loved working with this person, they were so helpful on this massive project, they led the marketing department and contacted over 100 people, you know, to get prizes or free services or to sponsor the program. So I think those can help. And I will say, personal experience, I struggled asking for people to give me those. But I had them do it because I've worked with a lot of great people who really believed in me. And it was during the pandemic. I was laid off. So I was like, I got to do what I got to do. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel so self-centered doing this, but can you please write me a review on LinkedIn?
And they are willing to write it, right?
And you know what, in the grand scheme of things, there's nothing wrong with it. You're just advocating for yourself. And, you know, you yourself have probably worked with great people. Just don't even wait for them to ask. Write the review on their page. You know, do that nice little gesture can go such a long way. And I think it can only help you to show how many people really believe in who you are and what you bring to the table.
Yeah, and when you give a recommendations to someone, LinkedIn does the second part, saying, hey, you received a recommendation. Would you like to give that person a recommendation? So you don't have to ask. You're just sharing your perspective about how it was to work with that person. I love recommendations. And from an introvert, how I see it, we don't like to talk about ourselves. So these recommendations are third-party endorsements, and people like those. Instead of me talking about myself, and I don't like to talk about myself, I let someone else to talk about myself, and other people might find that more credible. So it can build trust and credibility if other people write the recommendations for you. And you can just ask. And if they won't respond, they won't write that review.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of clicking a button and sending that request. Writing, you can write first and then see if the others will reciprocate the recommendation. So do you have anything else that you would like to add about this topic, about the current trends in the
Well, I think something else that candidates can do, and probably what I'm going to say is going to be a little controversial, is, and this I think especially applies to college students or maybe former stay-at-home parents or spouses that are looking to return to the field, is list your volunteer experience and don't call it volunteer experience. Because whether you get paid or not, why should it matter? You put in the work. You put in the work. So I'm a huge advocate that all of those experiences contribute somehow to them learning something new, learning different skills, helping other people or organizations or animals. I think that that's valuable. And I think it really can help to show like what type of a person, you know, they are. So don't leave those out, and don't feel like you have to label them as volunteers. So what if you didn't get paid? You still did the work.
Yeah. I call them other professional experience.
Yeah.
Because you're using your skills there, you learn your skills, you actually, those type of positions are where you show up who you really are as a whole person, not just the skills required for this position. So like you are saying, people can get a better idea about who you are as maybe an employee inside a company, in that environment, how you will function. If you're someone who has a nice work-life balance, like to do things that you're not an alcoholic, you like to kind of work on your own projects. So it is important to have all this, because also we're talking right now a lot about mental health. So this helps with the mental health as well. So it shows that you care about your own health and your own productivity in the workplace. So it adds something to whatever you said in the rest of the resume.
Yeah, absolutely. And just making sure your resume is up to date. I cannot tell you how many people have sent me resumes and I'm like, where did this job come from? And it's like, oh, I forgot to update it on my LinkedIn, or it's on their LinkedIn, but it's not on their resume. And so really make sure those two align. And I don't think there's an issue. Again, it's controversial. I think what I've learned most is there's no one size fits all really rule in this, which I know doesn't help to simplify things because everybody values something different. But you know what? Go ahead and use LinkedIn as your resume, because for the most part, if you're applying for jobs through LinkedIn, if you're wanting to get noticed by recruiters, guess what's the first thing they see? Your LinkedIn profile. So why not tell them, like you had mentioned, all of your accomplishments, what you bring to the table, make it like another form of your resume, because that's how people are going to get to know you. And especially for recruiters where they are kind of having to make decisions very quickly, it gives them a good idea of, wow, this person has a lot of what this job that I'm looking to fill entails. I'm going to reach out to them rather than making them guess. It's like, well, they said they're this, but they don't give a description of what they've done. So I'm just going to move on to somebody who has a more full profile and who's a little more forthcoming with that information, whether it be their resume or their LinkedIn profile. And I don't think it's a bad thing. A lot of something that I've seen, which I think is a good thing, is when companies post jobs, there are a good number of instances where they actually in the post link the person who's in charge of hiring for that. So when you apply, DM that person directly and say, hi, I just applied for your HR position. I'm really interested. I love what your company stands for. I'd love to be considered for the role. And if they don't respond,
okay.
That's their choice. And that might signal to you like, I don't think I even want to continue this if they can't even bother to say, thanks so much for your interest. I'll get right back to you. I'll look for your application. But there's nothing wrong with that. Again, like you always have to go into everything as like, what is the worst that can happen? They're not going to respond, or they're going to say, please don't contact me, which I can't really see people doing if they've linked themselves to the actual position. But if you can find that person, just reach out to them. Or if you apply to a company that doesn't have that, look up the company and then see who's in HR and just pick a person and say, hi, I applied to this because they might be getting 300-400 resumes that they're trying to sort through. And that's impossible for one person. So be your own advocate. Don't be afraid to do that. Just be polite about it and don't stalk them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
No means no.
Yeah, I love that one. So you recommend to reach out after you send your application, right? Not before.
I wouldn't before. I would apply and then just say, hey, I've applied. From what I've seen, I think I could really bring a lot to the table. I love what your company stands for, and I'd love the opportunity to speak with you further about it. I mean, kind of like be your own recruiter in a weird way. But I think that shows a little bit of initiative. And like I said, like, what if you're the 300th person to apply? Even if that hiring manager, that recruiter is on top of everything, this is probably not the only job that they are trying to interview for and hire for. So it's okay to make it, a little easier on them too.
Do you have any tips for the video interview? Because it seems to be more popular since we start this remote work.
Which type of interview?
Video interview.
Oh, video interviews. I would say treat it just like you would an in-person. Dress professional. Don't, try to be in a quiet room, no distractions, no loud noises, to the best of your ability. That's the best case. Is don't think of it as an interview, just think of it as an in-person in a different way.
I like that perspective. It's just shift your mindset from, it's a virtual interview, it's different, into it's just a normal interview. Yeah. I even go further. It's not even an interview. It's your opportunity to get to know the company and the company opportunity to get to know you. So, and when you put this in the perspective that you want to build a career, and I'm talking about this in my books that I showed earlier, think about what career do you want? What kind of jobs you can take right now to be a stepping stone toward that career? So when you go and talk in a, let's say, job interview, think about how this position can help you further and go there motivated because it can help you to get there, not because it's this position in this company. So you have something that intrinsic motivation to go out there and just have a nice conversation, because if it's not this company, this position, it might be another one, but you still go in that direction because you're looking for what you really want and just building those stepping stones.
Absolutely. I think, nobody wants to start at the beginning. So that's where I would encourage companies to really look at the experience the person has, pay them for that, even if it's in a slightly different role. And for candidates, like, that's not always a bad thing. I don't think it's realistic to think that, well, you've done 20 years in accounting, but now you want to go into marketing, but you don't want to start at the bottom. Like, you are going to have to gain a foundation to learn that particular skill if it doesn't directly coordinate with what you've been doing for the past however many years. Yeah, and then for companies,
go ahead.
Of moving people up, like, as you see them excelling, I think the frustration a lot of people have is like, oh, you can't get like a raise unless it's like the time of the year for performance review. And I'd really encourage companies to just, gosh, if you see somebody doing a great job, just go ahead and give them a little bit of a pay increase. Like, wow, we've really seen you improve. You've risen to the occasion. Here's a little financial promotion for you.
I love that.
Yeah.
Even for that example, you were talking about an accountant who wants to shift toward marketing. He or she can go into a company that has a marketing department. So if you're clear about what you want to do in marketing, because there are so many things you can do in the marketing field as well. If you're passionate about something more specific, let's say do some market analysis, you already have kind of an accounting background that works with data and numbers. And so you can gradually shift toward that position, not directly. I was an accountant, I'm a marketing analyst right now. But if you find a position in a company that has that kind of role, gradually you can integrate that company with your background and start building connections, learning about what the position requires, what is required for a kind of beginner position, if you need to take additional courses. So gradually you can build, like you were saying, that foundation to move toward that ultimate goals that you have.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it is going to take a little work on your part. If you can afford some classes to get started, Maybe there's a marketing certification program out there. Generally, certifications are less expensive than a degree. So maybe work on getting a certification to show like this is a serious avenue you're willing to take. And in some cases, that doesn't even mean you have to apply to a different company. If you enjoy the company you're with, let your supervisor know that this is of interest to you if you feel comfortable doing that. And a good company will help that come to fruition for you.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So we talked about a lot of things today. Do you have kind of some piece of nuggets of wisdom at the end for our audience?
Oh gosh, I think I put so many out there, but I mean, I think the biggest one to kind of sum it all up is candidates really, really know what your non-negotiables are and things that you can be flexible on. And companies listen to your candidate feedback. Do the do follow-up surveys. How was your experience with the recruitment process? Even if they don't get the job, do the surveys to see if there are any common threads of, wow, we've had like 10 people say this. This is really something we need to work on or that we need to change. Mm-hmm. And do employee surveys, and don't make it punishable, and really listen. And managers, meet with your employees frequently. Mm-hmm. See how they're feeling, what they're thinking, because that's a great way to hang on to good people, is to head them off at the pass rather than just, oh, well, I guess another one bites the dust. I think really it's communication all around. Communication is always something that can be improved. And then to marry that with active listening, you've really got a recipe for success.
Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. Thank you for all this discussion. I hope people got something out of it. And I wish you all the best with your journey as an introverted recruiter.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You can stay here. We can...